Hey everyone, today we're ranking Dead by Daylight killers from easiest to hardest. For this video I want to use the tiers that are visible in game. I actually started this back with the old tiers, and so I've updated it with the new tiers, which are easy, moderate, hard, and very hard. Some of these I feel seem a bit off in behavior's own rating of them. For example, there's characters like Trapper and Hillbilly classified as easy and moderate respectively. This is of course just my opinion. I'm not going to claim I know better than the devs when it comes to the difficulty of their killers. This is just my perspective on it. This is going to be quite different from person to person, so be sure to drop your own list or points you have down below. Let's get into it. Starting off with my own easy tier, we have Wraith. Wraith I think is the perfect character to get started on when playing killer. There is very little to his power I feel. Cloak, uncloak. Use the speed from uncloaking to get a hit. Cloak when you want to move about. Use the cloak to get body blocks in chase. It's all quite simple stuff, and the only thing you're managing really is the cloak mechanic, which is a great tool to initially shorten the length of a chase. Wraith has a very easy entry level, which as a free character I think is great. Next up we have Nightmare. Freddy is a character I've always classified as a tutorial killer almost. You get a lot of passive buffs with Freddy from the dream world, making him a breeze to play. His main power, his snares, are easy to place. Simply dumping them in and around loops is pretty effective. His most technical aspect is probably his teleport. Even that is very straightforward, and delivers you right on top of a generator. There is some skill to faking the teleports, or using them to cut people off, and simply choosing the right place to teleport to, but still I think they're quite basic things to learn and execute. Cannibal I believe is quite simplistic. His power lets him sweep his chainsaw, extending the duration he can do this up to 3 times. The main difficulty of Bubba is getting the chainsaw charge time right, and getting a good idea of the general distance the chainsaw can take you. But that's all there really is to him. There's maybe a bit of a challenge when it comes to strategies with the tantrum mechanic, I suppose. He's also a great camper, which I feel genuinely does make him an easier character. Demogorgon is a killer that is quite easy I feel, with its special attack basically just being a better basic attack. Its portals are relatively easy to place and control, and there isn't much thought that needs to be put into their placement, as long as they do their job. The main aspect of Demo is still its chase, which with Shred is really not too hard to learn, again acting as a buffed version of its basic attack. Clown's main difficulty is mastering the use of his bottles as projectiles. The way they move is unlike anything else. However, this is basically all there is to him. His yellow bottles are generally just used for map traversal, and the pink for cutting down loops. Throbbing and managing the bottles can be tricky at first, but overall he's a simple, easy to learn character. Toss a bottle, it slows them down, then you hit. Doctor is a character that by and large is quite easy. The main difficulty to his power I think is timing the shocks correctly, but I think that's still a fairly easy thing to get the hang of. A bit like Clown, his gameplay loop is essentially just power spam, hit and repeat. There's definitely a degree of technical difficulty for Doctor, with his shock timings and such, but it isn't enough, and I don't think is varied enough either to be considered particularly difficult. Again, I don't think there's much of a skill ceiling to his power. Legion is a character who recently got a buff, and I think they're still pretty much in the same spot of being on the upper easy end of characters. Legion's power is pretty much just an instantly applicable game delay, and can allow you to injure a whole team fairly easily. Legion is often effective against new players due to this delay, and the distraction it will provide, leading them to heal. The main difficulty for Legion is against a team who knows how to face them, but that's more just a general killer weakness than it is anything you can control, so I agree with behavior on this one. Onryo is a character I think gets kind of overblown when it comes to difficulty. Again, behavior's rating in this case is hard for Sadako. I'm putting her top of easy because I really don't feel there's much to learn for Sadako, nor are her powers that difficult to use. In terms of condemnation, you don't really have much control over that anyway. The main thing you need to monitor is stealth and teleports, which at first can appear intimidating, but really are quite easy to pick up. Sadako is a weak killer, but I don't think she's a hard one to play or learn. Moving on to my moderate characters. Shape is going to start us off in moderate. Much like Sadako, Shape isn't hard I don't think, he's more just weak. I think there's more to learn with him though, particularly due to his larger and more diverse range of add-ons, and the generally differing gameplay that comes with him. The whole stalk first, hit later thing is definitely something that won't come easy to everyone, so I'm going moderate, which does actually align with behavior. Trickster I'm placing in moderate, due to his power being largely focused on his knives, which I would say do have a learning curve, but don't really require much skill to use. Trickster's whole thing is spamming knives, barraging survivors. That's what he does. He lacks map control, but that's more of a general killer thing to improve at. The actual usage of his power is quite easy, I think. The main thing I would argue is the limited number of knives, and using them to consistently retain pressure does have a learning curve and higher skill ceiling. Next we have Huntress. Huntress's main difficulty comes with her hatchets, a bit like with Clown's bottles. This is the only thing that really needs to be managed. Her hatchets have a bit more skill to them though. You have to reload at lockers, you have to learn their weight and arc, and there's generally more hindrances like wind-up time and throw speed, which notably sets apart good and less experienced players. Ghostface is next up and is a character who has a similar-ish power to Maya's. His stalk is arguably easier due to the speed in which you can mark survivors, but then also arguably weaker as it doesn't apply to everyone. With Ghosty's buffs, he's also far stealthier now, which does certainly help in chase. A bit like Maya's, his differing gameplay certainly complicates things. I think his marginally harder stalk and power downtime does make him a more difficult character to play. There's further more technical aspects with use of his crouch and lean abilities. Not much, but again, notable difference between players who do and don't use these things. Deathslinger to me is the hardest out of the ranged killers. This is in part for the nerfs he's received, and the many bad add-ons he has. He doesn't really have much to help his base kit really, unlike someone like Huntress say. His speargun I feel does require quite a bit of skill, with the way the projectile moves, the precision required, and the need to reload after each shot. Knowing when to go for a shot, knowing the different angles and things to shoot through, takes a while to learn. Knowing the length of loops and how far you can reel survivors is also a big deal. Nemesis is another killer classified as hard. I would personally knock him down to moderate. The only aspect of Nemesis's power you have control over is the tentacle and infection application. His zombies are literally AI, and you have no control over how they move. So to me, that doesn't add any form of difficulty. Maybe using the zombies to know where survivors are has more of a learning curve to it. His tentacle is fairly easy to use. Ready it at windows or vaults, slap it down. And the whole application of infection on first hit can be kind of tricky to get used to, but I wouldn't consider it hard. Oni is a character I personally think is easy, which is quite the clash to behavior's very hard rating. Maybe I'm rating Oni lower than he should be, due to my playtime with Oni being fairly high, but personally I feel he's one of the stronger and easier to play killers out of the entire roster. I'm going to bump him up to moderate, due to his slow early game. But even that is dependent on how quickly you can get hits. There are technical things to learn with him, but the learning curve is a steady and manageable one. His actual power is incredibly strong, easy to chain together, and allows the use of a forgiving insta-down attack. Spirit is next up. Spirit is a character who can be argued quite a bit, because I realize if you're someone who plays without headphones or something say, the experience with her is drastically different. Realistically, the only thing to learn though is tracking, which isn't that hard. I play Spirit whenever I need footage, never really any other time, and I can play her moderately well with little to no practice. She has more counterplay than she used to, but she's still quite passively strong. Okay, onto my hard tier. Hag is the lowest point in hard tier to me. She's a killer who I feel can be hard to get the knack of initially, but after that her gameplay is easy to replicate from game to game, creating a territory to protect, then simply maintaining pressure throughout. That said, playing her I feel is exhausting. The constant setup, managing of your area, and repeating throughout the match is genuinely tiring and requires you to constantly be alert. Easier to learn, but hard to consistently do well with, due to the required retention. Trapper I would personally classify as hard, but at the low end of hard, due to his simplicity. Trapper has a simple power, but the difficulty comes in the form of how effectively you can use that power, which is where the hard factor comes in. A good and bad Trapper is night and day, and even when a Trapper is good, they can still be at a distinct disadvantage against a strong survivor team, largely due to obvious downsides like his need to set up and to manually collect traps. Plague is quite a technical character, and is a character that requires a different playstyle, where you need to put in a lot of work to setting up the game with infection. You need to monitor each survivor, and use your power when it becomes accessible, within its time limit, and again to its full potential. There is a lot of learning with Plague when it comes to timings and stuff like that. Juggling your green and red vomit, and knowing when to use each, is a big deal, I feel. Pig is a character that is hard largely for her requirement to down people in order to use her power essentially. Prior to your first bear trap, you have no pressure, no power really, and she relies solely on your stealth and your fairly difficult ambush attack. There's a lot of techniques and strategies to learn for Pig and her different abilities, all of which require a good time investment. She can get lucky with her bear traps and the pressure they provide, but largely she is weak, and work needs to be put in to make her strong. Twins I'm putting in the hard tier. They're here primarily because of their many weaknesses that are going to be a big hurdle for someone trying to learn them. Their power is actually very strong. It's just brought down by its inconsistencies and sluggish nature. A good Twins player and a bad one, again, is very distinct in difference. They're the only character really which is basically two characters, with the possibility to be in two locations at once. Victor also has his own aspects to learn, with his unique movement. With that said, Victor is incredibly strong, and does give many benefits, making Twins still fairly manageable for anyone to pick up, but to do well with, another matter I would say. Artist I do actually believe to be quite hard. W key strats are kind of a big deal right now, and they mess up Artist quite a bit when used. Artist power I think is often fairly boiled down to just place crows on loops. There's more to her power though, and the management of it can be quite difficult. A bit like Hag, she also requires constant attention of the whereabouts of players. It can be very easy to lose pressure as Artist. There's most definitely a learning curve to the crows, and using them as a multi-tool for chases, information, and general pressure. Nurse is going to be a controversial one, because I know people's experiences with her is very 50-50. I find her very difficult, but again I know there's people who have the direct opposite experience and find her insanely easy right away. Nurse is difficult because the way you play her is unlike any other killer in the game. Whether you win or not is almost entirely dependent on how well you play, with things like map layout mattering far less, due to your capability to phase through walls, and travel long distances with great ease. Finally, let's look at the killers I consider to be very hard. Executioner I consider very hard purely for the amount in his kit, with a lot of it actually requiring a good degree of thought to be put in. His ranged attack requires thought, prediction, and knowledge of how the attack moves. Then the caging and the placement of trails requires thought and consideration into where the survivors will move, and how it can be used to your advantage. He has his benefits sure, like bypassing meta perks, or his ability to mori tormented survivors. Still, there's a lot to learn for this guy, and typically a lot to consider in game 2. Cenobite is in a similar boat to Pyramid Head, with his kit having a lot to it, with technical aspects to his power like his chain summons, that when missed are quite punishing, and quite hard to control and fire. Maintaining control over the Lament configuration and keeping pressure up is kind of a Hag situation too, where it's kind of tiring to do. It requires your full attention and focus from game to game. For that, I think he's very hard. The two killers I believe to be the hardest to learn in the game are both Blight and Hillbilly. This is pretty interesting with them both being speed-based characters. They're also two of the strongest characters in the hands of good players, but wow if they have a high skill ceiling and steep learning curve. A good and bad Blight or Billy is incredibly different. I imagine for console players, the movement of these two is even harder to manage and master. These two both have very difficult movement, which is powerful when properly learned, but often detrimental to someone who doesn't know how to use it. Both require extra knowledge of the tile spawns and layouts, and knowledge of collision and stuff like that. They have initially appearing simplistic powers, but simple doesn't just immediately equate to easy. Maybe some controversial top picks, but that's what I'm going with. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and as always, be sure to drop your own thoughts on this down below. Thanks, and goodbye.